Hey guys, this is Dragon's Beard and I'm back with another Raid Shadow Legends video. And today I wanted to show you the clan boss team that it's not necessarily new. I've been running it for the last couple months, but it's different than the Batman Salad Eater that I featured on the channel originally. And I wanted to showcase for you what I've put together. This is still a Double Maneater comp, but it's one of the slower teams that runs at a 1-to-1 ratio. Instead of 2-to-1. So, a lot lower speeds. It was able to free up a ton of the speed gear that I had on my account that I could use for 3v3 Arena. And in doing so, I was able to move champs into attack percent boots and defense percent boots and get them at a lot more reasonably attainable speeds. That way I could free up that speed gear. So Turvold is the star of the show. I've seen some of the things that E&K has done with him and also the Dark. So I was inspired to get him out of the vault. One of the earlier Void legendary pulls that I had, but since I already had Barbarian Faction Wars cleared, I really didn't put any effort into him until afterwards. So I've built him. I've got him in all Cruel sets. It's not a requirement. We'll talk about the gear here in a second. But I wanted to use some of the pieces that I had on hand. So Turvold, by far going to be bringing the most damage to the team. And I've got Kreela in here who's going to buff the team's crit rate. It's going to bring ally attack, and in general just going to provide a lot of support for the team in terms of buff contribution for Turvold's A3, and then also lowering the gear requirements for some of the crit needed in the builds. And since I saw these two champions being used by E&K, he mentioned that instead of Saito or Fu'Shan that he had used in some of his earlier teams featuring Turvold, he would like to have used Martyr, and since I have Martyr, that's who I decided to use. So she's bringing counterattack, and she's also bringing increased defense, so that's going to bring Turvold up to 7 buffs occasionally when he's using his A3, and that's really going to be what allows him to crank out that huge damage. Plus, having a reliable counterattack, and instead of having to rely on defense tree masteries, is huge to the damage that the rest of the team is bringing. For my Maneater, since they don't have to run at crazy high speeds like with the old team, I have dropped them from speeds in the 280 level down to 216. They actually both run at 216, and I have them in Toxic gear. So I'm going to kind of show you the individual builds, deep dive into what I put on them and for what reasons, and then we will take this for a spin in Ultra Nightmare. Clan boss is Spirit today, which is actually the affinity that this team does best on, but I'm able to see good results on every affinity, and I'll show you some of that towards the end here. So for Turvold, I have him, like I mentioned, in triple Cruel gear, so kind of had a couple benchmarks that I was going for when I was building him out. I wanted to get to preferably 6k attack and 250 crit damage, so that's the thresholds that I set for myself. I was able to get there, so we've got just under 6.3k attack on him, 70% crit or 72% crit rate. 70 is the soft cap because of the buffs that he's getting, and I got the crit rate up to 256. So we put a little accuracy on him. 259 should be more than enough. That's needed to have a high uptime on his weaken, and then the speed, as I mentioned, and this team is very low. It can be anywhere between 151 and 158. It's kind of based on some of the other champions and the ranges they're in, but I've tested this in the calculator and it works perfectly fine for the speeds of the rest of my team. So I have him in the triple Cruel. I've seen good success when putting him in the Fury gear, but I don't have good Fury gear, so that really wasn't an option for me. The accuracy is more than enough that he's going to need. 55% chance for a weaken is already pretty decent, and then he's got another 20% from books, and then I've got him in Sniper, so he's going to keep weaken up very easily on his own, especially when you factor in the counterattack procs. So that's his contribution. And then for those of you that don't have or know Turvold, he scales based off of the number of buffs he has on him for his A3. So in this team, and the way that I have it tuned, I've got him having anywhere between 5 and 8 buffs every time he uses his A3. And there's a few things that when I'm doing the setup I'll kind of show you in order to get the buff count to be as high as possible when he's using that. Alright, so next up is Kreela. So she's not going to have quite as much damage in her build versus Turvold, mainly because her base attack is so much lower, but as a support champion, I was still able to get her into 5k attack, which was pretty nice. Her speed requirement is just a little bit higher than Turvold's because she's not buffing her own speed like he is. 171 to 178 is the speed range there, so she does need to be faster than Martyr, but can be anywhere in that range for the most part. 70% soft cap again on crit. I was able to pack a little bit more crit damage on her just because I'm using some crit damage sets. And then I've also got Lure of Steel to give her a couple extra speed and crit damage. And I'd like to get her into Lasting Gifts. I don't have her masteries finished out yet, but that would be like the next move. There's just a couple scenarios throughout the fight where her buffs will wear off, like when a Maneater takes a double turn or something like that. So Lasting Gifts will be helpful, I think, for that. She's got Life Drinker in the offense tree. There's a specific reason why I run Life Drinker on 4 of the champions. I do not have it on Turvold. What we're going to try to do is use the shield on her A1 and force it to go onto Turvold to give him an extra buff. So it's based off of the ally with the lowest HP, and if we can keep his HP lower than everybody else's with counterattacks and what have, then he's going to pick up an extra buff, and that can raise him up to a maximum of 8 buffs in this comp, which is nuts. And when he hits 8 buffs, I've seen some crazy numbers come out of that. Ally attack is her main thing. I do not care about the stun. Clan boss is immune, so I don't have accuracy intentionally in this build. And increased attack is a huge thing when it comes to helping out the rest of the team, because every single champion that's in here, except for Martyr, is going to be based off of attack damage, and 50% is a pretty considerable one, especially with the uptime that she has. 3-turn buff on a 4-turn cooldown. So I have seen success with her in reflex gear, just because it lets her cycle around to her ally attack more often. But again, I don't have good reflex gear, just like I don't have good fury gear for Turvold. So I just use mixed sets. But I got some speed and crit damage in there, just for a little bit of extra oomph. With Kreela, she goes last in the counterattack order, and I'll show you that when I'm setting up the team itself. So next after her is Martyr. So Martyr's the lead because she's really the only aura on the team that does anything. With defense in all battles, it's really only helping her, but it's better than not running one at all. I've actually considered maybe not putting her in the lead, just because then it would maybe make the rest of the team start taking more damage early, but it works as it is. So her primary roles are the decreased defense. Just like Turvold, has a very high chance at keeping this up. It's 45% base. Looks like another 30 from books, and then she's in sniper as well. Again, I do not need defense tree masteries, just because she's bringing a reliable counterattack. So 80%, she'll be able to keep that up very easily. But then she's also giving 2 buffs for Turvold through increased defense and counterattack. So not just counterattack damage that she's giving him, but also helping out his A3. On auto, she is going to use suppression. Provoke doesn't work. Decreased attack doesn't really matter. But this team doesn't really struggle with hitting the debuff cap, so it's kind of a non-issue. It does hit harder than her A1, so it's not a big deal if she uses that on auto. For her, I was able to get her into defense percent boots. So the 3 primary damage dealers do not have to have speed boots, just based off of how low their speed is. And then since she's got a perception set on, I was able to get enough accuracy without needing to use an accuracy banner. This is not even a good banner. It's just the only defense banner that I had kept with speed subs. I'd love to see a defense percent sub on her, but I just don't have one. So with her base stats, 5k defense is kind of the minimum I was looking for. She's in that same 171 to 178 speed range as Kreela, like I mentioned, but she needs to be slower than Kreela so that she goes after her in the turn order. And 70% soft cap on crit damage, or crit rate, just like them. Not as much crit damage on her. If I could squeeze a little bit more in there, then it would help her individual contribution. but she's got more than enough accuracy for what she needs to keep that decreased defense up. So those are your 3 primary damage dealers. The Maneaters, though, however, they're going to actually do more damage than what Martyr does, just based off of the toxic gear. So since this is a poisonless comp and the speeds are a lot lower, it's very easy to get both of the Maneaters into toxic gear. I was able to get a crit damage set on this guy as well, so they are in speed boots just because they're running at a 5-4 ratio at that 216 speed. So with them, nothing special. Like, I haven't even gone crazy with stacking their attack up. They're in attack percent chests, but that's and banners, but that's about it. So 2.7k attack on this one, 216 speed. He's crit capped. He doesn't need to be that high, but I have him in crit rate gloves, which just happened to put him over the both the 70% soft cap and the 100% hard cap, and then he's got a decent amount of crit damage on him for a Maneater. Trying to get as little accuracy as possible because I don't need him to land his decreased attack. Again, Martyr's going to land hers. It's going to be up no matter what, so it doesn't really matter whether he has it. So I was able to go with similar masteries on him. Life Drinker, again, to keep his health high. The shields are most likely to go onto Turvold or the 2 Maneaters. So if I can keep the Maneaters away from minimum HP, then that's what's going to force that shield to go onto Turvold. And he's got Lore of Steel just for a little bit more base stats. Toxic does get affected by Sniper, so that's the reason why he's got that, and it's also affected by Master Hexer. So both of the Maneaters are going to be set up nearly identical. I've just got better crit damage on that one and less attack, so it's kind of mixed up. So this one's a couple hundred higher attack, same speed, doesn't have as much crit rate, but again, not needed, and then less crit damage. That's just the sets that I was able to put together. Same masteries on him, Life Drinker, Lore of Steel, and then those same poison masteries. I didn't even finish the rest of the masteries because you don't want something like this decreasing cooldowns when he has to use his Unkillable at certain times.
Alright, so I had this recorded already against Spirit, but that footage got corrupted, so we're going to redo it against Force this time. So for this comp, the champion placement in the character screen is actually important. We want Martyr to be first for the aura, since she can benefit from that just herself, but then also so that she can put, during counterattack, increase defense up before the rest of the champions have their chance to counter. Same reason for Turvold. He puts that weaken up ahead of the other 3, and then also we don't have to worry about the bar getting too full from toxic set poisons to where that won't have any room to go on. But the important part here is that Kreela goes last. And that's just for that shield placement. So since Martyr and the Maneaters and then Kreela herself all have the Life Drinker mastery, and Turvold doesn't, then it will make all 4 of them have a chance to get a slight amount of healing before her shield goes out, which is going to leave Turvold with the lowest HP percent. So that's just the reason why it's set up the way that it is, since he's the one that doesn't heal. So let's hop in here and I will show you against Ultra Nightmare what the turn order is to start out. Both Maneaters are just going to open with their A2. They're the only ones that go faster than the clan boss. And going forward, really there's only a couple things that are important to the timing. Kreela can do whatever, but we're going to open up with her buffs for the rest of the team. We're saving counterattack so that it lines up with the AoE. So I'm just going to do an A1 from Martyr here. And the other thing that's important is that we're saving Turvold's A2 until turn count 6. If he makes himself buff his own speed too soon, then it can cause the rest of the stuff to come out of sync. So we're just going to put up his A1 for weaken. And then fast Maneater uses Unkillable, the slow one does not. Ally attack. Again, what she does is not as important to the turn order, it's just how do we maximize damage. I'm going to use A1 from Martyr because we're saving her counterattack one more turn. We're going to do one more turn without using Turvold's A3 because next time he goes, he'll have more buffs. And we're just cycling around until we get that counterattack up. The slow Maneater does not use Unkillable until turn count 4, so couple more shots before we get there. Now it's time for counterattack right after the stun. And Turvold's going to have 7 buffs now, so we're going to go ahead and use his A3, biggest hit. So Turvold almost dies here because I have mine built super fragile. From this point forward, he's actually going to have unkillable every time he gets hit, so he won't die completely after this turn. If he lives to turn 4, then he lives overall. So this is the turn when the slow Maneater is going to use Unkillable. And just going to keep on cycling through A1s until we get back to the turn count 6. Buff up from Kreela again. And turn count 6, this is where we're going to be able to go on auto after we do a few things. So this Maneater, the fast one, gets 2 turns during this clan boss turn. So we're going to do the A2 for the first turn, and then when it comes back around to him, that's when we're going to throw the Unkillable up right beforehand. Turn count 6, again, is when we saved Turvold's A2. So he can go ahead and use that and buff his own speed. Now we have the choice of the A1 or the A3 here. The reason why we're going to use the A1 is that when he comes back around to his next turn, he's still going to have all of his self buffs, but then he's going to have more buffs from Martyr and Maneater. So we want it to line up like that each time, and that's the reason why we save the A3. So at this point, on every affinity except for magic, this is when you can kick it over on auto. Against magic, what might happen is that Martyr gets stunned on this turn, and you're going to have to wait until turn count 9 to make sure that she doesn't waste her counterattack after the stun wears off on turn 7. So this is 4, so we don't have to worry about that, so we're going to let it go. And at this point, Martyr's going to put up her counterattack, and then Maneater's going to do Unkillable, which is going to give all 7 buffs to Turvold. And then after the counterattacks happen, this is where that forcing the shield comes into play. Kreela is going to give him the shield because he had the lowest HP. And it's going to give him 8 buffs. So you can see he just hit for over 800,000 between the 2 hits. That 8th buff is a huge component of getting that extra damage squeezed out of his kit. So, setup's done now. We are just over 1 million damage per turn. That's going to grow significantly as the fight goes on. And everybody gets below 50% HP. But then also, we've got everything falling in sync from now until the end of the fight. I am going to cut it here and then come back towards the end, and you can kind of see how we finish up. Okay, so we're here towards the end. Turn count 47. Already hit 1 key. We hit that 70 point whatever damage mark right around turn count 41. So this team can 1 key every affinity. Magic is just slightly lower because decreased defense doesn't have quite as good of an uptime with Martyr having weak hits, but against Force there's no problems at all. That you get a little bit less damage from Kreela, but that's fine. And we are going to break into the 80s. This team will almost hit 90 million against Spirit, since you've got strong hits from Kreela in there as well as neutral for everybody else. But the big winner here in terms of damage is definitely Turvold, 33 million. I've seen him break 35 million with my current gear, just depending on RNG. The Maneaters and the Toxic sets, and the fact that they have quite a bit of stats boosted just because of Kreela having increased attack is pretty sizable for their damage. Most of the time you see those Maneaters run less than 10 million damage in the comps, but to do more than Martyr herself is pretty nuts. And then Martyr and Kreela still putting up a respectable 10 mil of pop. So we are going to switch over to Nightmare, and I will show the setup for that, which is just slightly different. Same team order and everything like that. But what we're going to do in Nightmare is that we are going to use Turvold's A2 just a little bit earlier. So the Maneaters start off the same. They both use their A2. Kreela goes ahead of the clan boss now because the clan boss is slower on Nightmare. So we're going to buff up. And then we can use the counterattack right off the bat just because Martyr is going ahead of the clan boss as well. So You set up a little bit easier on Nightmare. The damage is going to be higher in Nightmare for that reason too, because everything falls into sync sooner. So we are going to do an A1 from Turvold just to get Weaken up. And then same concept, he has more buffs on his next turn, so we're saving the A3 for that. So same order here. Fast Maneater, the one on the left here, he's going to use Unkillable now, and then the slow one will just do an A1. And ally attack. Then we're just gonna we already have maxed out decreased defense. We're just gonna throw out an A3 from Martyr just to do a little bit more damage. Doesn't really matter. And when Turvold comes around this time, he is going to have the 7 buffs, which is going to be what lets us do his A3. So already hitting harder just because the lower defense on the clan boss. Next up is we're going to just move back around to counterattack again. I like the setup on Force Affinity because Kreela is the one who's taking the stun with weak, being weak affinity. It doesn't really matter whether she gets stunned or not. It just slightly delays her turn, so no big deal there. We are still saving the slow Maneaters Unkillable until turn count 4. Along with Turvold's A2, so we're just cycling around to that. Counterattack again for Martyr. And then turn count 4 is going to be where we can start the kind of the same thing that we did on turn count 6 for Ultra Nightmare. So we're going to do self buff for Turvold using his A2, and then follow that up with the A1. Same idea. You want to use the A1 here instead of the A3. That way it falls in sync. And then slow Maneater is going to put up Unkillable. And then we are just going to cycle back through until turn count 6. Turn count 6 is when we're going to do auto again here. Basically, the Fast Maneater has his Unkillable available right now, but we don't want to waste it, so that's the reason why we have to do just a couple more turns on auto, because we need that to come back around. Kreela buffs. And same idea here. The Fast Maneater, the one on the left here, will get 2 turns, so we're going to do the A1 first, and then at this point, it's going to be auto because everybody else is already synced up with what abilities they need to use. And then what we should see is the same thing as on Ultra Nightmare. Martyr's going to do the counterattack, and then right after that, Maneater's going to do Unkillable, and then that's going to set Turvold up with the 7 buffs again, and then we'll see the same thing where Kreela's shield might not go on him just because not everybody's taken enough damage to be zeroed out yet, but later on in the fight, that same process will happen to where everybody stays at low health and gets healed except for Turvold. Compared to the Ultra Nightmare run, since we had that counterattack starting from the very beginning, you can see we're almost at 2 million damage per turn for Nightmare. I am going to do the same thing, cut to the end, and then show you how it finishes. Okie doke, so we are at the end of the Nightmare run, coming up on that 100 mil mark. I've actually broken 100 mil. 102 is my record against Spirit Affinity, so Force and Void kind of fall just under the 100 mil mark, and then Magic is around 90 on Nightmare, but pretty nuts damage. We just barely broke the 100 mil mark, 100.3. So Turvold in Nightmare 40 mil almost is just mental. And then the Maneaters and Kreela, a few million higher than they were. And then I realized I cut off Martyr with my head last time, but 14.2 from her on Nightmare. Just a few more million than what she did on Ultra Nightmare. So I love this team. It saves so much of my speed gear when I switch to it. And, there's not really that much going on. It's a 1-to-1 team that can put up crazy numbers like this. So one other thing I'll mention, too, just for Brutal, the sync does not work in Brutal with the speeds that I have. There are some speeds kind of based on the easy Double Maneater speeds that will allow it to work on Brutal, but I just throw the same team on and hit auto from the very beginning, and the team's able to do about 30 million, which is enough to get the top chest. So I haven't worried about actually changing the speeds in order to make it work on Brutal. I believe that what's going on is that my Maneaters run at 216 and they're just a little too slow for that team. But again, it doesn't matter. I am happy with just getting the top chest and being done with it. And I've never had it run at less than 28 million, so I am perfectly okay with that. So you'll be able to get, with 3 keys a day, 3 chests, the top for each. This is the first team that I've run that has actually been able to do all the chests without having crazy speeds of like 270 plus on the Maneaters and what have. So I have some more Turvold content planned. I'm actually going to be doing a variation of the Deacon Salad Eater, so back to running the Maneaters at 5.2. I'm going to be setting that up later today, so hopefully I'll have another video coming through shortly in order to show that for y'all. But thank you so much for any of you that have subscribed. Like, I didn't expect off of just a few videos in the beginning to be over 100 subscribers. So I will be doing some type of celebration or giveaway here soon, maybe on the next video, in order to reward any of you who've taken the time to like and subscribe to the channel. And I look forward to getting more content for you soon. Thanks, and I'll see you again next time.